is too cozy for the situation we are in. We must be deliberate. We must be deliberate about our investments, and they must target areas that we can create jobs. We have to be deliberate. I agree with you. We have put a lot of resources in infrastructure, but the return from those resources in terms of jobs and in terms of what the output, the expected output is not as forthcoming, right? And going forward, our plan is we must be deliberate on the areas that we are going to invest going forward. And they must be areas that will help us deal with the challenge of unemployment. We must be deliberate. I gave an example the other day, and it looked disrespectful when I said that, for example, we invested in a can manufacturing factory in Ruto. We invested 4 billion shillings. We created 100 jobs. It looks nice. You know, we're assembling guns, and it's all nice. But you see, if we had 4 billion shillings, if we had invested it in EPZ, for example, we would have created maybe 4,000 jobs, maybe 5,000 jobs, same amount of money. But so we have to choose the areas we are going to invest going forward, so that the resources that we have, we deploy them in a manner that it brings a return in many facets. Create jobs, and we also create goods that we can, as you say, export. So we are going to be deliberate about that. We are going to work with you, and I'm happy that you people are also concerned about our investment. Where are we investing? Are we getting a good return on where we are investing, or we are investing for a different purpose? From where I sit as Deputy President, and we worked on this with my friend Uhuru Kenyatta, we dropped the ball in 2018. We dropped the ball because the base we had set from 2013 was sufficient. We now needed to move from investing, because if it's being exported in its primary state. In fact, we were having a conversation with my brother Musali and another team, and one gentleman was telling us there that in Westlands that he went to Egypt and he was served this very nice cup of tea, and then he decided, oh, because this tea is very nice, let me buy some, I take it home. So he bought the tea in Egypt, brought it here. So when he came and told his son, oh yeah, I got some very nice tea from Egypt. And then there was some small print at the corner there, product of Kenya. You know, all they have gone to do is to do a bit of blending and package it, and then they are selling it at a premium. So, and you see, we have a huge bottleneck with our auction here. So we need to rethink about the auction and step back and do more value addition to our tea, do more value addition to our coffee. We will create value, we will create jobs, and it doesn't take so much. The problem at the moment is, in fact, I had a gentleman in my office the other day who is a Kenyan, who has had to relocate to Rwanda because we have made it impossible for him to do value addition of tea in Kenya. I have a gentleman from Limuru here, right? So he's going to Rwanda so that he can take our tea to Rwanda and do value addition there and make more money for Rwanda than us. So again, these are, and I agree with you, we have bottlenecks that we can remove so that we can enhance our contribution of manufacturing or value addition or that whole space. to our GDP. So let me repeat again, we will be deliberate, because we are not only, and whatever needs to be done for us to achieve that, we must do. Let me also give you another example. When we figured out this railway thing, it was largely for us to promote our manufacturing and industrialization sector. And we were looking at Naivasha being a very big hub, because we have cheap energy. We can actually easily get power in Naivasha at 4.5, 5 US cents, minus the transportation and the geothermal power. We can get it cheap. And we already have ready steam from the geothermal. So our focus was, how do we use geothermal, both the steam and the power generated, to lower the cost of our production and create products that can help us do import substitution, but also help us work with what we can export. And again, we were looking at, and that's part of what our team is looking at, two primary areas: textile industry and leather industry. I know it may look limiting, but that's where we really have an edge, and we have cotton we can grow locally. We've been dancing around BT cotton for far too long. We cannot continue to imagine that we cannot work with BT cotton. It is stupid, if I may say, for anybody to think that we cannot plant BT cotton in Kenya. I mean, all the clothes we are wearing could possibly be BT cotton material. So we must go that direction. We have a lot of expertise in that direction. We just need to improve on the ginneries, and we will be able to have a product that we can meet world-class standards, even if it means working with some of the best textile factories in the world and giving them a foothold in Kenya, so that, as you said correctly, they already have markets. We should be able to leverage on them, accessing the markets they have, but working with our cotton and working with our labor and working with our steam. We are and that's why there is a bit of this conversation about mitumba and what have you. Mitumba is not what we are looking at. Mitumba has a niche market, and you can never compete with mitumba. But there is a whole bigger market on textile, on people who don't buy mitumba. They need different clothing, and that's the market we want to address ourselves to. And the same thing with the leather industry. I went, for example, to Rao's outfit in Athi River. I mean, you can't believe it. All the leather that I use myself, we stopped buying leather from Dubai, because we can buy from Rao. And we are buying from Rao at 30% of the price we are buying from Dubai. What Rao is selling for 1,000 shillings, you need 3,500 shillings in Dubai. Same quality, yeah? What are we doing today in Kenya? David Ndi will tell you, we are slaughtering 3 million heads of cattle. We were in Kajiado. We were in Wajir. We were in Marsabit. Their biggest complaint is that they give the skin to dogs. The skin is nothing. The hides mean nothing to them. It's a big loss. And what are we doing? We are importing all these leather products. So I don't think it's rocket science. And Rao is already doing it here. It's not something that is out of space. Rao is already doing it here. We've put 1 billion shillings in a tannery in Narok. Yeah, that's not doing much, but you can see a bit of traces now. They are now making boots out of the Narok tannery. So we have a whole manufacturing industry out there. And we need to work with you guys, look at what we can do in value addition in all the primary products we have, coffee, tea, and what have you. Look at what we can do in the textile sector. What can we do in the leather sector? These are areas we can have a conversation with you, work on what are the incentives required, what are the issues required. And therefore, if you look at our plan, almost 40% of it depends on the sector that you're in. Our other plan is how to create market for the product that you manufacture. And our focus is on how do we create a population with some purchasing power, right? And our focus is in the area of SMEs. We are looking at these 600 people that we inject into the labor market every year. They are doing all manner of things. They're selling little wares here and there. And that whole sector has about 10 million people. Yeah, it's growing. And their biggest challenge is largely three issues. Number one is space for them to do whatever it is that they are doing. They are doing it in every place. So we're looking at how do we create infrastructure that support the people at the bottom of the pyramid. How do we create, number two, legislation that protect what they are doing? And number three, how do we make them access credit? Many of the people, many of the 15 million people in CRB today are largely those people. Because they try borrow from M-Pesa, they go and do something here, they go do something there, they end up in CRB. Why? Because Fuliza is charging them 6% per day. You are all manufacturers. Tell me how much you can do with interest of 6% per day. That's 2,000% per year, you know. Our thinking, and we have worked with numbers with Professor Ndi and his team, is that if we worked with these people and we simply made them access credit at 14% like all of us, yeah, we could easily, with a little bit of intervention here and there, we could easily grow their incomes from 200 shillings, 100, 200, maybe 300 on a good day. We can grow it to between 500 and 700 shillings a day, right? That way, we will create a bigger pool of people with a bit of money to buy what we are all manufacturing. And if you just looked at in a simple manner, assuming we even add just 200 shillings per day to their income, that's about 2 billion shillings a day for 10 million people. That's about 720 billion shillings a year. If as a manufacturer you go to 1%, that is 7 billion shillings to your business, right? That's where we're looking. How do we work with what they are doing at the moment, just make it better so that they can earn more money as we seek for ways of transiting these people to a more reliable, as you said, as we grow the manufacturing, the value addition sector, for us to take them there. How do we improve their incomes as we work on? So we are looking at how do we create a bigger pool of taxpayers or people who have some income. Yeah, how do we support that sector? And that's why we are proposing that we are going to have a micro and small enterprise fund, which will make it easier for these people to access credit. Let me give you an example, practical example. Ruaka market here. So we were campaigning for that gentleman called Wanjiko in Kiamba. So we arrive at Ruaka market, we find him and they say, please help us. The Shylocks are finishing us, you know. We borrow 1 million shillings every day from the Shylock, collectively. And at the end of the day, we pay the Shylock 1,100,000 every day, right? So please, you know, do something about this. If we got 1 million shillings, we would save 100,000 every day. You know, that's how serious it is. And it's not just that market. We did the same in Gong market. Yeah, we did the same in that market. I don't know. No. This market in Kabete, Wangige. Yeah, the same thing. So there is a real serious problem of access to credit. Yeah, which if we address, we can significantly increase the incomes of many small people. You know. It looks simplistic, but it is real. I mean, it's reality. You know, that's what happens. You know, so so we're looking at how do we assist you guys selling this product and that product, and I'm looking at it even from my own point of view. You know, I produce eggs. I'm looking at how many more people can buy these eggs. You know, from my small farm in Sugoi. You know, the more you expand the income of people, the better for everybody. So that's one area. And sometimes people think we are emphasizing too much on the small people. But you see, that's the base that everybody needs. If we sort out the base, we sort out everybody, because we create a market for you guys for the products you are selling, your manufacturing, your processing. We create a bigger pool of people who can pay tax. We only have the chance to reduce your taxes if we have more people paying. You don't have a chance of us, say, reducing VAT from 16% to 14%, for example. We will only have that chance if we have a bigger pool of people contributing. But as long as it is thin, we'll have to shoulder the bigger burden. So that's our approach. We are looking at the export market as well. You know, edible oil. You all know we import close to $1 billion of edible oil. Maybe 80 billion on a good year, but largely $1 billion every year of edible oil. We've had a discussion with many counties. We were in Busia, for example, and Busia is saying we can grow simsim, we can grow soya. You know, can somebody help us with a market? You know, so the disconnect is the people who grow the oil crops and the market, and the people who need it. Sunflower, soya, simsim, and the whole of that space. We need manufacturers like you to come in between for the offtake, you know, and then process, right? So that we don't have to import $1 billion of edible oil every year when we can actually grow it here. I was having a Mulembe was it West FM last night, and that was the conversation. You know, people are telling us we are growing sugarcane, and we are making 20 billion shillings a year. If you enabled us to grow edible oil, we would make 80 billion shillings a year. They would actually replace this edible oil that we are importing. And that is the case in all that area. So that's the space we are looking at. We are looking at how do we enhance productivity and how do we bring you guys in the middle to help us with offtake, process, and then when you process, you will do us two things. You will give us edible oil and you will give us animal feed, which currently we are importing all the raw materials from Zambia, from Tanzania, from all over the place, and that kind of thing. Forgive me because I am so passionate about this thing. Maybe I've talked for too long, but it is something I very strongly believe in. So, so what we are looking at is how do we use where we are to create jobs? How do we create a bigger market? How do we create an export market? And how do we leverage on whatever infrastructure that we have now to make it work for the bigger picture? And then finally, so that I can ask my other colleagues to speak to some of the issues. And you have said it, the whole space around water infrastructure. You know, we had a big plan on the water infrastructure that again collapsed because of politics, you know. We have identified, like around the country, some 1,500 small dams and about 57 mega dams. We've only done 3 of the 57, yeah. We need to create a different model for building these dams because water is something that can pay for itself, you know. You're not asking for free water. You are asking for water that you can pay but a reasonable price. You don't have to invest in doing 2 million, 3 million shillings to get a borehole, and then all the other infrastructure, 5 million shillings to get a tank and all that. You don't have to do that. So that's another space we are very keen about, and our intervention, our engagements around the countries have given us a sense of how heavy is it and where are the gaps. And finally, we have to deal with the big challenge that brings a lot of stress, and that is the health challenge. Clean water will do quite a bit of it, but also we will have to work out and fashion a universal health cover scheme that is affordable, that is reasonable, and that carries a majority of the people. And finally, we will have to do something about saving. We must do something about saving. You know, we must do something about saving. Savings is a very big component of whether we can grow or whether we're going to be in debt. Even as we borrow other people's money, at the back of our mind, we must know that what we are borrowing is what others have saved. Yeah? So we cannot just be on a borrowing spree thinking that it is free money. It's not free money. You know, we have to pay for it, number one, and we have to understand that it's the savings of other people. And we need to think about our own savings. I'm sure you are aware, we are at what, David, 7% maybe of our GDP in terms of saving? Huh? 7 or 8%, yeah. Very interesting countries. China, for example, is at 55% of their GDP saving. That's why we are all going to China. It's because to create the understanding of saving. I remember sending our Minister for Labor 3 years ago to Uganda. Uganda's small, their economy is almost half ours. but their NSSF is the largest, I think, in Eastern Central Africa. Why? Because the law in Uganda says 10% of your salary goes to saving by law. Yeah? And the same amount from your employer. So they have created a big pool of resources which they use to borrow to do their infrastructure, right? At the moment, I am sure you're all aware, we are all paying 200 shillings, Kenya shillings, 200, to NSSF, aren't we? Yes, 200 shillings. Even if your salary is 500,000, you're paying 200 shillings. You know, I think it is silly. Oh, so I know that there are other saving instruments that are in the corporate world, but we have to rethink about that whole space of saving and push our savings as a percentage of GDP to a level. The big quarrel I have, I know you people know that I have a big quarrel with Atwoli. Atwoli doesn't like me at all. Because I do not understand how he can be opposed to saving, you know? Because, I mean, what is the use of retiring and then you are paid in your retirement 70,000 because you have been saving 200 shillings? You know, how does that help anybody? You know? So we really must go that direction and find a mechanism of saving. And finally, we cannot continue the trajectory, and I agree with you, we need a much more stable tax environment. People must know that for the next 2 years, 3 years, you know, this is where I will need to think about in terms of our taxes, you know. This is where we think we need to do. But every budget cycle, we are all thinking, so what's going to go up this time? And unfortunately, it always goes up. It never comes down, you know. So I wish in some instances it would come down, then people maybe could look forward. So everybody is looking at what is going to go up this time round. And we need to avoid the criminalization or politicization of tax paying. You know, we really can't continue the trajectory that tax is being collected by the GSU. It cannot be that tax is collected by people with guns. I mean, we really have to think about better mechanisms of tax collection. And from where we sit as Kenya Kwanza, we are all aware that at the moment we are collecting 52%, 53% of collectible VAT. We are collecting 52 thereabout percent of collectible VAT. If we collected all the VAT that we need to collect, and it will not take a year for us to put the infrastructure in place to collect GDP, to collect our VAT. In fact, David, I think we are collecting VAT 4%, 3.6% of our GDP. Rwanda is collecting 8% of their GDP. South Africa is collecting 11% of their GDP. Other countries are collecting 20% of their GDP. There is a real scope for us to collect VAT, and we can collect an extra almost 500 billion shillings just by making sure that everybody pays for payable VAT. What do we need to do? We need to do what Rwanda came to learn from us. We need to digitize, we need to computerize so that everybody pays their VAT. And if everybody paid their VAT, our corporation tax will also go up by maybe another 200, 300 billion. So we can move our tax revenues from the current 1.6, 1.7 trillion to 3 trillion. We can move it to 3 trillion, and it doesn't take a miracle. And with that, we will slow down on borrowing. We must stop. We must really think about borrowing. It cannot continue. We cannot continue to say we are using other people's money. It's not working because we are paying 1 trillion shillings every year on debt. 1 trillion shillings every year. If you are collecting 1.8 trillion and you are paying 1 trillion shillings debt, you're not in a good place. It doesn't matter how you look at it, right? And I think this hole of debt, we must apply the principle that if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging first, then figure out how you can how you can get out of it. So I think we need to stop digging. You know, we cannot continue with the mentality that, oh, you know, these are other people's money anyway, let us borrow. And I think that's being a bit too casual. So I think that's what we need to do. I know I have said many things in a haphazard way. Sometimes I'm much more organized than that. But anyway, let me leave it there. Maybe I can ask my colleagues to just make some interventions, maybe on something I have forgotten. Amen, maybe you can say something. Or David, maybe, yeah.
I can just elaborate then so that Musalia can close. Okay. He tends to say more wise things than the rest of us. He's more reflective. Just to emphasize that I think we saying the same things. Terms of how we agreed on the what. I think we have some, or here is just some ground examples of how and the what. I'll just illustrate with one example about, for instance, in terms of strategy. Our whole approach, as has been said, at present, is focused the entire economy and the value chain approach. So rather than sectors, because sectors can be silos, yeah, we look at a value chain. Because we want, as I said, we are looking at an economy that is production-led, rather than, in fact, investment-led, for the simple reasons of where we are financially. We have stopped talking about production and productivity. For the last several years, we've been talking about investment and enabling environment and all manner of things, except where the rubber hits the road, which is a production base. So we're looking at the entire economy in terms of value chains. And when we look at a value chain, we look at where you start from the market. That's how you look at value chains. You say, what's the market for these? And what does the market want? And what can the market pay? And then you work backwards to make sure that you can compete. Where is your competitiveness bottlenecks? And those are the bottlenecks you fix. But we're also looking at, then you have to prioritize the value chains, given where we are, that give you the most bang for the buck and quickest for your public buck. So I want to illustrate with one value chain that you mentioned. That's why we need to have a meeting of minds of why we are approaching it this way, and you are looking at it more like what we need to do for manufacturers, so that we can have a meeting of minds. Yeah, let's take leather. As I said, we have one of the biggest livestock herds in the world. Yeah. In Africa and even in the world, where we have 70 million odd ungulates. That's big animals. Cattle, sheep, goats, camels, donkeys. 70 million odd. If you measure them in what we call livestock units, so that the cow equivalent is in the region of 35 million tropical livestock units, where you convert several sheep and goats into a cow, and then you say one camel is 1.5 cows. There's a formula that agriculture people use to arrive at that. But we are not big players in that sector of leather and whatever. Vietnam produces about 1 billion pairs of shoes, or thereabout, employs 700,000 people in the leather industry. When I look at our policy documents, they are saying we have a potential of creating only 35,000 jobs a year. That's a huge understatement. So just doing some basic maths. The thing with leather, why do we pick leather? We are looking at 3 things. As we said, how much potential a sector has to value add agriculture. Because we know that when we look at competitiveness, that's our, compared to countries we're competing with, for instance, our labor is expensive. If you're trying to compete with Bangladesh in the garment sort of sweatshop industry, our labor cost is twice theirs. So where we have an advantage is the things we are able to produce cheap. And we can produce hides and skins at virtually no cost. But we have a challenge of recovery and a challenge of quality. And those are things we can fix quite quickly, because we also need to improve the finishing of our livestock for purposes of raising productivity of livestock. Because our carcass weight for cattle right now is about 90 to 100 kilos. And these are cows with, even our zebu cows, which have a potential of doing 150, 160 kg. Even 200. So we can, by just putting them into feedlots right away, we will be able to raise productivity of our beef production by something like 30, 40%. While you are doing that, you improve the quality of your hide and the recovery of your hides. So if we recover all our hides and skins, we get 5 million pieces a year, about 3 million cattle, 2 million small stock. If you convert those into shoe equivalents, right now our total size of that industry is 15 billion shillings, according to the last data I've seen from the industrial census. 15 billion shillings, 7,000 employees in the formal sector, about 10,000 in the informal sector, according to the leather industry study I saw, a couple of from the World Bank and the Leather Council. Now, 15 billion shillings. Now, if we convert, even using our own data, we're selling, I was looking at the data, we're selling hide at 60 per kilo, leather, processed leather at 200. That's the export prices if you look at the economic survey. So already value addition from hide to leather is 3 to 4-fold. From leather to product is usually about 6 or 7-fold. So from hide to product, if you take shoes, is about 10-fold, 8 to 10-fold. That's the standard for that industry. So if we take our 5 million pieces of hide and convert them into shoes, you get about 50 million pair of shoes equivalent. If you do 50 million pairs of shoes equivalent and convert that at $20 only, perhaps, 2,000 bob per pair, it's $1 billion industry. So that's an industry that you can get up going very quickly. That's the key. We are slaughtering the cows anyway. The money we need to put in is very little, and we need to put it in anyway so that we can raise productivity. So the plan we have for our rangeland economy, because we need to have that plan for the rangeland economy for those people, because they've told us that that's what they want, to provide for them wherever they live, sort of livestock finishing facilities, and it's not very expensive. We're probably going to spend 100 million shillings per facility per county. So we do 4 or 5 facilities in each county, 10 billion shillings investment in those livestock finishing facilities. We've got our productivity up. We've got our rate recovery up, hide recovery up. We've got, and in a couple of years, we've moved from a 15 billion shilling industry to probably 200 billion shilling industry at least. So I just want to illustrate the difference. Yeah, 10th of our budget. Yeah. So I want to, where we need to have a meeting of minds, where we look at different is you're sitting in a silo called manufacturing. So you're only seeing your silo and not how it connects to the other people. Well, when you talk about agriculture, because we're looking at and by value chain, you don't mean just agricultural. Another example which has come out of our health sector is manufacture of pharmaceuticals and medical goods. We are importing saline solutions from Uganda, made by Kenyans in Uganda, and paying an arm and a leg. So one of the things that we are seeing that we have to do to bring down the cost of healthcare is look at where we can do local manufacturing cheaply of generic drugs, of those sort of medical commodities, bandages, because our total health spend today, we have numbers, is about 550 billion. About 20% of that is commodities. So that's a good 110 billion shilling industry. How much of that can we capture? 20, 30%? Again, but it comes out of our health. Our health, since we need to do, health is one of our pillars, we're asking ourselves, well, example, something we don't talk about, I see government talking, we've been trying to do vehicle assembly for donkey years. And I've even seen a policy which is proposing that we go back to the 70s, protecting local assemblers. Yet, we have a new industry called boda boda. We've got 1 million boda bodas on the road. If you look at the replacement, just replacement rate, we're talking about obsolescence, maybe 200,000. So without even protection, we know that there are people who are already assembling. Some of your members have gone into assembling boda bodas, isn't it? Kai and General, various other people. And that's an industry where we can see ourselves leveraging on the size of the market. Because we can also, if you look at, if it was 1 million, I think within the EAC, we are talking about 5 million motorcycles. 5 million motorcycles, so that replacement rate is 1 million motorcycles a year and growth. DRC has just joined the EAC. So if we can capture sort of a chunk of that, 10%, we're exporting 500,000 motorcycles a year. And then we're even looking at leapfrogging internal combustion, because we already have people who are doing electric, and they're easier to manufacture, so we can leapfrog the internal combustion engines quite quickly. Again, we start from a transport value chain, and we end up in manufacturing. What can we manufacture along this chain? So that's just a different of approach, and why it is that you're probably going to see us focusing on specific commodities and lines, because they integrate. They talked about edible oils and that kind of thing, so just a meeting of minds. One point on taxation. As economists, we know that the best things to tax is consumption and wealth. And the thing you don't want to tax is trade and investment. But when you're under pressure of taxes, you tax what you can. Yeah? And we've seen that's moving more and more in the direction of the wrong things. So I just want to connect that with economics, with what he said about VAT. That what you want to move is move in a direction which taxes consumption and wealth, so that, because that has less incentive effect on the economy. So you don't want to tax trade and investment. Yeah? So you want your tax to move towards VAT and property taxes, particularly for funding devolved units, because that is ability to pay That is linked to the principle of ability to pay. So because it's consumption which tells you ability to pay. Somebody who drinks single malt whiskey has more ability to pay than somebody who drinks sort of fruit juice at the kiosk. So you can slap 100% tax on single malt whiskey so that you don't tax fruit juice. That's the principle of ability to pay. Because ability to pay is not observable, it is actually revealed by behavior. So what we want to move is towards more VAT, more property taxes, less corporate tax, and less import tariffs. The only thing you want to use import tariffs for is not for revenue, but for protecting the industries you want to protect as a matter of policy, to protect yourself, and not protecting for import substitution purposes, but protecting yourself from dumping. That, in principle, that's what you look at. So that you put your tariff at the rate of everybody else's. So if people lower yours, you lower. If they raise, you raise. That's the game. And as we move into ACFTA and all these things, obviously we have less room to maneuver on protection. So we cannot wake up one day and decide we are going to protect this industry without harmonizing within the EAC, increasingly with COMESA, and probably with the whole of Africa. So yes, we are on the same page on taxation, that we need to move more to indirect taxes on consumption. That is VAT and excise taxes on luxuries and sin taxes. Those are good. You can tax if you could control smuggling, you should tax tobacco at 500%. I know there are some manufacturers who will complain, but that's the truth. And then less of corporate tax and tariffs, which are really, so on that we are totally on the same page. But to do that, we have to widen the consumption base. That's the point I wanted to get to. We have to widen the consumption base so that we can tax more consumption and tax less production. So, thank you. Thank you very much. Now we listen to wisdom after listening to techniques.
Well, I think we've covered most of it. I just want to say that we would like you to look at Kenya Kwanza as partners. And we would not want to treat you as an opposition. You know how government has been treating opposition. So we want to look at it that this is a partnership, and we want to really walk the journey together. So mine is really a question, because your document is very good, by the way. Just scanning through it very quickly. It's a very good document, very practical, realistic. You're practitioners in the arena, so you're not talking from a theoretical perspective. You're really giving it from what you feel and what you touch every day. I just want to ask one question. Do you feel you have had what you would call a strong engagement with the policymakers in government? Here you're talking of maybe entities like the Treasury and all that. You know, speaking candidly, and in any case we are where we are. So don't feel threatened. Do you feel that it has been a robust engagement? Or do you think there's detachment? You know, maybe as you conclude, I think that is something that we'd want to know, so that going forward, when Kenya Kwanza is in place in another 49 days or so, we would like to be able to know that what can we really do to engage better with you, rather than maybe just a casual approach, because looking at the document and your comments, it's like you're being ambushed with taxes, you're being ambushed with policies, and there hasn't been sufficient consultation and so forth. But just tell us, really, and honestly, do you feel that it has been robust?
So maybe so that we can put all together. Maybe I can ask Mutua to just hold your response. Alfred?
Yes,
You need this?
yes, can I just put it in? It's good to meet you again. We used to have these meetings a lot during Kibaki's time, but a lot of more meetings than I think now. Let me just be a bit simpler and just back up what Dr. Ruto has said, and that is going to point by. I read your manifesto, everything, including the full stops, and I looked at it. I read it about twice, and the challenge that I'm seeing here is bureaucracy in our country, basically in everything. And when you talk about taxation, when you talk about regulations, when you talk about starting a company, investment, everything, there's a huge lot of bureaucracy. And as Kenya Kwanza, we are committed in cutting the fat and cutting the bureaucracy. Make it simple for you. As I used to say, our job is not to frustrate business, but to facilitate business. So that's one of the things that Kenya Kwanza is talking about. When we talk about manufacturing, for example, if you look at China, come up, there's basically a factory in every other village, you know, which helps. And we've been talking about how do we work with counties from counties, and talk about, you know, Dr. Ruto talk about the EPZs, talk about business parks, you know, have these business parks in counties whereby investors can come in, plug and play. And the whole concept of other people's money should not be money we borrow, should be money coming in, what you're calling the, you know, FDIs, which comes in handy. And this is where Rwanda is defeating us. I went to Rwanda and did an experiment of forming a company. It takes 6 hours. Set up a company. It takes 2 weeks to start manufacturing. And that's the direction we are going, you know. We are bringing the spirit of chap-chap into all this, you know. We get in and moving. But there's also something else. We talked about water, but also, and we talked about geothermal, but also the cost of power has to come down. But also we have been talking and thinking about the distribution of power. You know, why is it that you have all your factories have standby generators, you know, power fluctuations, all that extra cost. And, you know, we've got a monopoly in the distribution of power, and we are thinking maybe we need to open it up, you know. Let's the counties have solar farms that now provide power to household, and let's leave the grid to manufacturing. And then the cost of power comes down, and then the reliability of power is assured. You had a big section, you know, it's about fiscal responsibility. And, you know, yes, we've had our challenges. COVID did not help, but also we've not put money in the right places as been. So you can be assured that Kenya Kwanza, with the experience that we have, we are moving towards that way. And the whole thing about taxation, the double taxation, raw materials versus the finished product, you are taxed at the national level, taxed at the county level for the same things. You know, you transport goods across the country, you're taxed. It's something we've had over and over again. So the things that we're really looking at, you know. But at the end of the day, we are very pro-business and pro-manufacturing. And when you talk about widening the base, it's basically a consumer-driven economic model. We widen the base, we get more people involved in economic activities from the ground through the middle. When we widen the base, what that means that we are creating a market for you internally and look at the market externally. So everybody is able to. So we don't have these people at the bottom pulling the rest of us down. So that helps you grow. So when they talk about Mama Mbogas and everybody at the bottom, you know, bottom up, it's not about the bottom up we really care about only. We are caring about the bottom up, but it's a bottom up that's going to make the middle class and the upper class even richer and manufacturing do better, because now you have a market that is able. So I think you're in the right place, and you have our commitment that we are clear of this. And some of us come in with a lot of history. A lesson. I used to sit down with Mike Kibaki, and I've understood, and you know how it used to work with the credit and everything during that time. Yes.
Thank you very much. Maybe then
And you do realize that Kenya has done fairly well bilaterally, regionally, multilaterally, but we have not really leveraged on our diplomatic presence across the board to promote our commercial interests. And we intend to be very deliberate in turning that around, to the extent of even tasking our foreign missions and getting our diplomats to execute performance contracts that will be pegged on how much you're pushing Kenya's commercial interests. You do realize, for instance, that we are a big player in the EAC. We are actually the anchor of the EAC. We are a big actor in COMESA. We've played a pivotal role in the FCTA. But when you look at how strategic we've been, and I'm talking from the perspective of the last 5 years I've spent at the Foreign Office, I can tell you clearly that we have not been deliberate at all. We've not been strategic at all in deploying our diplomatic presence to be an advantage or give us a cutting edge advantage in the export arena. And so as we talk bottom up, it's not just bottom up in terms of our national economic forecast, but also on how we can leverage on our diplomatic presence to push our economic interests. And I think it will be very useful to task each mission, each embassy, on an annual basis or on a periodic basis to indicate the growth of how we are dealing with that. Thank you, Excellency.
Chairman.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the inputs. I think we've been seeing it anyway. This is a team that has thought deeply around these issues, as we are not just getting, what do you call, is it standard
Response.
answers, standard responses that are off. These are things that you've really thought about and gone through. And I think, like has been said, we do share a lot of the perspectives on it. I think I would just like to highlight partly in response to your Excellency, some of the things you mentioned, and especially on the SMEs. I think if you go through our report, we have mentioned SMEs. And all the things we are asking for, they apply to big and small companies. Because let's take regulation. In fact, regulation is the one I find even stifles SMEs more. If you put, like our member companies, some of the larger ones, if you put new regulations, like now there's a new one on data protection and so on, Coca-Cola will find. But if you are the SME, you are the guy who opens the shop, you're the one who checks the quality, you have no time for all these multiple regulations. So these multiple regulations are even more harmful and expensive to the SME. Similarly with tax, if the tax, it keeps changing, I'm used to going to pay my tax here on this day, then now it has changed, there's a new form, I have to buy a laptop, I have to buy a gadget, it starts becoming, it is too complicated to pay tax. So most people are actually keeping away because you've made it it's too hard. So all these things are important. And the SME, again, is important because it will be, we like to say, all manufacturers started as SMEs. All of them, everywhere in the world. So we must also invest in the future manufacturers. They must come from there. We really like the idea of the agriculture and the value chains. I think we are definitely along those lines. I think we can create that because it is the one thing we have that we can actually propel. You work with, yes, because if you think about competitiveness, even in the global markets, you take what you have and see how you can make it better for the rest of the world. That's what we need to work on. The question by Honorable Musalia is very pertinent, and I suppose, like David said, there is wisdom there. We can see good questions coming there, but to the point. So I would say in the past, the way I would put it is, we are listened to, but we don't know if we are heard. If there's a difference, because so we have audience, we can go and give our remarks and we say this is what we want and so on. But whether it is hard, whether it is something comes out of it is another thing. And I think one of the things we have put in our manifesto, you'll see, is we've actually asked for the revival of the National Economic and Social Council. I think it is an important arm of, just that engagement with government at a high policy level where we can actually debate the issues. Because also sometimes what happens, it is the reality, when by the time you meet government, they've made a position. So the person in front of you is there. Their job is to defend their position, not to explore. So something like NESC gives you an opportunity to explore. Because we say, okay, this is a problem, what can we do about it? And I don't have to take a position or anything, I just come in and say, let's explore, let's play with it and come out with an idea before an idea comes out of that. So I think it's an important aspect that we will need to work on, and that you are working together in a certain direction as you make those selections. On exports, as Abunamamba mentioned, I think here again I would say maybe it's also a change of focus. We've actually found at some stage we were also getting tired because there were always events. So I think the external people were inviting us. There's a conference here. There was a lot of travel. There was a lot of, let's call it economic diplomacy. We went to many countries. We want a commercial team to go with us and talk to people. But at some stages, like, what are we going to sell? What we'd like the people there to do for us is find out the markets. Again, the value chain approach, like has been said. If you're in Turkey, what do Turkish people buy and sell? It's go into the market and find out what is it that they buy and sell. So that when you're calling us, you're telling us there's this, there's that, there's this and that. And that is one of the, in fact, today in Kenya and we have people like, what are they called? The Irish are called what? There's Business Island. A lot of these there's a German one, AHK. I'm trying to remember the other British one. But they've actually sent people who are actually just looking at business in those countries. Even the Singaporeans have an office here. So it's just people who are coming here to check what is the business, and that's all they look at. So they're not even part of the embassy necessarily. They are working out of that. I don't know if I'll give one or two. If we have time, how many minutes we have left? We can have any contributions we'd like from any of our members. Hitesh and then Oliver. Okay. Thanks. Brief.
Your Excellency, and the team, sitting on this side, it's one of the first meetings where we've actually got really, really economic answers to solutions. It's as I'm echoing from the chair, so I'm really encouraged. But I wanted to talk about the real encouragement I heard on a comment you made about where you direct your infrastructural expenditure to housing. We've all known for housing has been a massive shortage and a big social ill and a problem. The multiplier effect that you mentioned in jobs, I believe even goes further beyond the figures you even gave. We've been playing a huge part in training. We've trained 2,000 artisans as a company, this is. And what we've done in training is the front end. You can talk about the building, the civil works, and maybe you'll have a lot of people there. When it comes to the internalization of those works, it's a different skill set. So you're talking about electrical, mechanical, people that are coming in, for example, on joinery and furniture and all this sort of stuff. But even the vocational courses, to be able to bring people to speed, like in our industry, we can turn around and we do training courses which are around 2 months, sometimes 1 month. You can skill someone from being a traditional artisan to an artisan who can actually use modern tools to be able to put in things like kitchens and wardrobes, etc. And that acceleration through a small vocational course for like 2 months, and each of those teams themselves are 6 to 7 people, because they're occupying each bedroom at a go-ahead, etc. So we were looking at this and saying this was an absolute and amazing agenda that the government had, and we were gearing ourselves and even our own technical abilities within the organization to deal with what was going to come of course, it never came. So we were very, very encouraged there. The other thing that we wanted to also, and we have a lot of ideas on how we can accelerate this, David. There's so many ideas. The other thing in terms of our exports, and we talk about the complexity of what we manufacture and export. We're not very complex as an exporting nation. If you look at what we do, it's from our primary state resources that we're very competitive. But we need to find a way in which we become a little bit more complex in what we export as a country. For example, we don't export furniture. It's non-existent. Yet we have huge skill sets. But that skill set sits on Gong Road, in Kikomba, and all of those things, because from a formalized economies in the early days, we've become informalized. And the real problem is because the cost of inputs coming into the country are expensive. And this is what goes to the other thing that you're talking about. We don't necessarily need to be expensive when it comes to importing things where we can see ourselves having a competitive advantage to export that same product. And with AFCFTA coming, we need to get competitive in more complex furniture manufacturing to be able to export to Africa, because that opportunity knocks on our door very, very soon. And are we ready as a country for that? Thank you.
And also for hearing us. And we had a similar engagement with UDA aspirants in Nakuru, whereby Honorable Susan was there. And one of the issues that was raised was on the taxation. And there was an agenda that was supposed to be raised, and the discussion opened at the Senate level. And because I see my incoming senator, I would like to ask that that debate carries on, so that it is tabled to be a bill, because having 37 licenses across Kenya as distribution licenses is not cost effective. Manufacturing is really affected. And also on the policy of payments, we would like to see a policy on payments from the government. Because when you supply your tenders to the government and it takes 2 years down the line, 3 years of huge debts, then it means that we are crippling the business environment, and the employer also is very jeopardized. So that is something else apart from the tax policy that we'd like to see that it is implemented. You have a very able person, Honorable Alfred Mutua. He's a good implementer. You know, when we sit this side, we see you. So the great team that you have, would like to see this being implemented. Also, you talked about Bungoma, for example, the seed. I worked for an oil manufacturing, Bidco, which is well known. And the main problem that was there was the quality of the seed. The oil content was very low, both for the soya and the sunflower. And so as we look also into being very competitive and also seeing what we produce is actually of value, of quality, we also need to see how to improve the quality of seed that is applied to them so that we enhance their agriculture to make sure that the seed, the oil content is actually going to give them a benefit by the end of the day. They would take their seeds from very far just to come and have an oil content of 8%, 7%, which is very low, from 14%. So I think if we can do that to improve and also give infrastructure whereby there can be collections and remove the brokers in between, then those people would have a value addition whereby now the manufacturer is able to manufacture good oil and also have good feed at the end of the day. Then we have the skills. Yes, we are moving towards the manufacturer and being very competitive. We also need to look at the skills. What we have seen is most government institutions, the kind of machinery that is used for training is not what we have in our factories. It's modern. What we have is modern. What they're using is old age. It's so outdated. So can we look at a way whereby we can also be able to modernize the equipment in our TVETs, in our training institutions, so that also we're able to improve the skills they have and making them employable. And for the water infrastructure, Nakuru, we have done 14 boreholes. But if Itare Dam was working, it would have supplied us And we kept asking, why can't we just finish the project and sue whoever later? Because now the expense is 14 extra boreholes. So as we look into the water infrastructure, the water issue, can we also look at just finishing up, instead of reinventing the wheel, can we finish up what we have so that we are also being able to get the value of what is within us, instead of going out to look out very far from where we are? And so I think when we do that, the other last thing, I know the chair will not be able to tell you, as the manufacturers, we've got the people that you need, whether it be for leather, whether it be food processing, whatever it is, would like to ask for representation in your incoming government. Thank you.
We'll keep it brief.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And as Mr. David said, I'm part of the automotive sector. With the regulation which we currently have for motorcycle regulation, assembly regulations, we have a roadmap to create 150,000 jobs in the next 9 years, where currently we are only manufacturing less than 4% of the total CKD which comes in as motorcycles, right? And we've got a whole roadmap where in 9 years we'll go to about 30-35% local value addition on components manufactured in Kenya. Kenya is at a very strategic place today where we can be the hub of the whole motorcycle industry and manufacturing for the whole of East and Central Africa. Okay? And that is, I think we probably need to work and see how we can take it forward. On terms of vehicle assembly, Kenya, in certain types of vehicles, we are very good and strong and competitive. So we also need to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. I'm going straight forward for a question of time. You talk about SME. For me, it's definitely SME is the key of the whole economy of Kenya. But I just ask you to think about one thing. Can you fix the banker? Because the issue are the banks. 14%, 17, 18, it's okay. That's not the problem. The problem is how many collateral do you have to give to get the money to invest? We are killing our talent. We have plenty of talent. In the 10 millions that you are talking, there is brilliant people. They don't have access to money. And money is there. But the banks, they think that someone is coming with an idea, it will not work. So the collateral, we have to stop this collateral. Or protect the bank or find some things there. And there we just kick off.
Okay, good people. Let me then, on behalf of our team on this side, say your team for the moments you have spent with us. We think there is huge scope for us to work together. We are looking forward to expanding this discussion now and in the future, so that we can better leverage on what we can do and what you can do to achieve what is mutually beneficial, you know, to grow the country. A win for the industry and a win for the people of Kenya, you know. So again, this is just a small bit of the discussion. I am sure we will have a much more in-depth discussion going forward as we look at creating the structures that will facilitate that. You've mentioned NESC, for example. That's, I think, a brilliant idea. We should be able to see whether we can bring that around so that when we meet, we don't have to defend whatever position we have. We can look globally at what is good for everybody. So again, thank you very much. And on behalf of our team here, we will ask you very kindly for your vote. You know, in this politics, it's very interesting. you know, somebody will not vote for you, and then the reason they will give is, he didn't ask. And yet it doesn't take much to ask. So we are asking for your vote, so that you don't, nobody says you didn't ask. And so that we can grow this country together. So thank you very much. We wish you well. We wish your enterprises and industries and manufacturing units well as we build our country together. Thank you.